I wish that I could just burst that bubble, but
I'm about to. Oh, thank you. Perfect segue. I wanted to do that, right? All right. So this goes back. I'm going to throw out a number. It's going to be totally inaccurate. Thousands of years into history. We'll go back to the ancient Greeks, right? Their most famous stories were about the hero's journey. And what's one of the main aspects of the hero's journey? Every hero has a mentor, right? So, right? My favorite, Luke Skywalker has his Yoda. Harry Potter has his Dumbledore. Every hero has a mentor. And that hero had to ask for help at some point, right? So if every great hero throughout literature and history had somebody advising or guiding them, it doesn't have to be that hard for us to look at ourselves and be like, yeah, I need somebody to go ahead and teach me how to use that lightsaber or else I'm going to cut off my own arm.
It's a great way to look at it, because those are maybe they're just easily forgotten in the scheme of things. We remember the overcoming adversity, but we tend to remember the overcoming, the main villain of the story, but we don't remember the personal demons that you had to overcome. I just watched Rocky again for the first time recently. That movie is heavy.
Number
one. It is so much heavier. There is so little boxing in that movie. The amount of personal struggle and relationship issues and drugs, alcohol, and just abusive relationships. It's crazy. I watched. I was like, this is not what I watched this movie for.
It's amazing the more knowledge we gain personally about ourselves, our own insight, psychology, and understanding human dynamics. We go back to those old movies and we're like, oh, that's why this was so amazing. It connected with me on such a deep level. I didn't even notice it. I thought it was just a boxing movie. And no, it goes to those archetypes of heroes and our deep psychology. Oh, it's amazing.
That brings me back to the point that I was just thinking about when it came to, so if people are having a hard time making that step and saying, and maybe it's even financial, maybe it's like, I don't know if I have the money to be able to afford a therapist, or I would suggest, I would bring up this saying, and I'm curious for your input on this. So I love the expression of that which gets measured improves. Right? And so if you take an assessment and you have an understanding, you take a legitimate MBTI, which I'm going to ask you for a resource of where people can go to get the best abbreviated and the best full version. How do people do that? But if you're willing to do that and you're willing to actually read through the material, and so that way you're forsaking for the time being, or you're pushing off that sense of vulnerability of opening up with somebody else, and you just want to maybe you feel more comfortable doing that. There is a sense of awareness that you get about yourself that can start to change the way that you operate, because then you see it on paper, you're like, oh, that makes sense. And then as you start to engage with the world again after that assessment, you're observing. It might even be after the fact. It might even be like you get done with an interaction, you're like, oh, that's why I did that. And then as you have more of these interactions, that what we call in the military right of the boom, like what happens after the event, after the explosion, starts to get its way closer to the boom. And so you're starting to realize in real time as you're reacting a certain way, like, oh, I'm doing the thing. And then you can get to the point where you're a little bit left of the boom. When something's starting to happen, you're like, I'm going to react this way.
I'm going to change my behavior. Yep, absolutely.
I'm going to change my behavior. Exactly.
The great Dr. Viktor Frankl says, between stimulus and response is our opportunity to choose. And some behavior change is simply realizing between stimulus and response, we need to give ourselves time to choose. Human behavior becomes so automatic sometimes we just react. And if we recognize we're reacting in a way we don't want to, we can pause and choose, okay, how do I want to react differently? And sometimes we need to learn that there are different choices that we can make. And develop different choices, develop different reactions.